So for this session, think of it like a mission. We're going to explore how his core message, especially about the feeling of I am, can actually change your everyday
Like
life.
a real game changer.
Exactly. Less suffering, more insight, all that good stuff. And his perspective aligns with ancient wisdom traditions like Jnana Yoga and Advaita Vedanta, but he brings his own unique clarity to it.
Like different paths leading to the same peak.
Exactly.
Now, before we get too far, it's important to understand Nisargadatta's view of the world. He saw everything, our bodies, our thoughts, the whole universe, as constantly in flux, like it's all made up of these basic elements, always changing because of cause and effect. And this idea that everything is impermanent, it really sets the stage for his whole teaching.
Oh, absolutely. That constant change, the cause and effect, it's all fundamental. And Nisargadatta really emphasizes that everything we experience is filtered through our senses and our mind, both of which are also impermanent.
So it's like our minds are creating this whole framework of time, space, how everything connects.
It is. It's like our perception of the outside world is totally tied to what's going on inside us.
Whoa, okay.
Yeah.
So let's get to the heart of it. The I am.
Right.
Our sources make it pretty clear that this is the foundation of everything.
Yeah.
But we're not talking about your name, your job title, any of that. We're
Right.
talking about the purest feeling of being, like
Yeah.
the root from which everything else springs.
Yeah, like before you even think I am your name or I am at your job, like Nisargadatta Gita points out, you have to be before you can even say I am.
It's like a wordless feeling.
Totally. It's the very foundation. And what's so fascinating is that Nisargadatta connects this I am with the emergence of our sense of space and the world around us. So it really is the starting point of our entire experience.
It's wild.
Yeah.
But here's where things get even more interesting. This pure feeling of I am, it gets a little distorted, right?
Right.
We start to cling to our bodies, our minds, and we create this illusion of being a separate me.
Yeah, and both I Am That and the Nisargadatta Gita are super clear on this. That mix-up is the root of all our unhappiness. It's where suffering comes from.
We start to believe that we are this limited form with all its thoughts and emotions and stories, and that creates this sense of separation, like us versus the world. And then from that comes all the vulnerability, the fear, the never-ending dissatisfaction.
Totally. We get so caught up in that idea of separation.
And, I think the Nisargadatta Gita has this really powerful way of describing the I am. It calls it both our worst enemy and our greatest ally.
Oh, that's a good one.
It's an enemy when it keeps us trapped in the illusion of being just the body, but it's a friend when it shows us the way out of that trap.
Yeah, it's almost like a paradox. It's like when the I am first appears, it kind of tricks us into thinking we are this physical body. And then we pile on all these other identifications, our roles, possessions, beliefs. That's when it becomes this enemy keeping us confined.
But Nisargadatta's path to freedom involves going back to that core I am, understanding it deeply, and using it as this pointer to what lies beyond our limited sense of self.
Right. So in that sense, it becomes our most powerful guide.
Okay, so how do we actually put this into practice in our everyday lives?
Yeah. How do we actually do this?
Like, what are some concrete things we can do? Because in I Am That, Nisargadatta tells us to hold on to I am. He encourages us to keep bringing our attention back to this feeling of just being throughout the day, no matter what we're doing.
Exactly. And it's not about, chanting I am like a mantra or anything. It's more about a subtle shift in focus. So as you're going about your day, working, talking, even just walking, see if you can gently bring your attention to that underlying feeling of I exist.
Just that simple awareness.
Yeah, and Nisargadatta suggests that if you do this consistently, you'll start to become aware of your existence as separate from all the noise in your mind.
Like stepping back from the constant chatter.
You'll start to observe your thoughts and emotions coming and going, almost like, clouds passing by. You're not so caught up in them anymore. And that relates to his idea of bringing the self into focus and watching the motives and results of actions.
And so you gain a clearer perspective on things.
Exactly.
And as we keep this gentle focus on the I am, something else starts to emerge, right? The sense of being a witness. When the mental chatter quiets down, and I know that can be a huge challenge, but when it does, and our attention stays with the I am, we start to recognize ourselves as this pure observer.
Precisely. It's a big shift. Imagine like you're watching a movie of your life. The I am is that feeling of being in the theater. But the witness, that's the screen itself. It's unchanging no matter what's happening in the movie.
It's not affected by the drama unfolding on it.
Exactly. And that's the pure awareness Nisargadatta is talking about. So by consistently focusing on the I am, you start to identify more with that screen, that silent witness, instead of getting lost in the movie, your thoughts and emotions.
That's a great analogy. Okay, so we're starting to get a feel for the I am and this idea of witnessing. But how does all of this actually play out in the ups and downs of everyday life? Because the texts offer some really practical advice on this.
Oh yeah, for sure.
One key aspect is detachment. How does understanding the I am help us become more detached?
Well, once you realize that you are that unchanging awareness, the witness, then you naturally become less attached to all the fleeting stuff that's happening. Nisargadatta himself said that his own detachment came from trusting his guru and understanding what was truly him and what wasn't.
It's about seeing what's permanent and what's just passing through.
Exactly. Like when you deeply understand that your body and mind are constantly changing, you don't cling so tightly to their joys and sorrows. Think about it. Like that stressful email at work, if you can see yourself as the pure awareness that's simply watching the stress arise, not the stressed person, it totally changes your experience of it.
That's such a helpful way to look at it. And this leads to another powerful tool, refusal and rejection. Nisargadatta talks about how the way back to yourself is through refusal and rejection of everything that you're not, your body, your thoughts, your feelings, all of it. He's pretty firm on this, saying that anything you can point to is not the true self. But how do we actually apply this idea of refusal in our daily lives without becoming, negative about everything?
It's a good question. It's not about being negative outwardly, but more about an inner discernment. Like throughout the day, when you catch yourself identifying with a thought like, I am angry, gently question it. Ask yourself, am I really the anger itself, or am I the awareness that's experiencing the anger?
So it's about questioning whether those thoughts and feelings are really you.
Exactly. It's about constantly asking, is this truly me? And if it's something that appears and disappears, then it's probably not your true self.
Because your true self is always there.
Right. And this internal no to those false identifications, it slowly clears the way for your true self to shine through. It's like peeling away layers of an onion, Each layer you remove brings you closer to the core.
Another really relevant application is how we experience time. Focusing on the I am seems so deeply connected to being present.
Oh, yeah.
Nisargadatta says that the world only lasts for a moment, and it's our memory that makes us think it continues. He encourages us to be with the I am in this living present. So how can we use that understanding to deal with all the worrying about the future or dwelling on the past?
Well, the past only exists in your mind as memories, and the future is just projections. The only reality you ever truly experience is this moment, right now. So by grounding yourself in the I am, which is always present, you shift your focus away from those mental constructs and come back to the immediacy of now.
So it's like an anchor.
Exactly. Like if you find yourself worrying about tomorrow's meeting, gently bring your attention back to the feeling of I am in this moment. What's actually happening right now. And you'll often find that the present is much less scary than all the stories your mind creates about the future or the past.
Okay, let's talk about the never-ending chatter in our minds. All those thoughts and emotions that can feel so overwhelming.
Oh yeah, we all have that.
Nisargadatta suggests that we should watch our thoughts like traffic on the street. Just observe them without reacting or getting involved.
That's a good one.
He also talks about noticing the influence of tamas, that's inertia and rajas activity within ourselves, so we can loosen their grip. But how do we actually do this when we're feeling super agitated or stuck in a negative thought loop?
Well, it takes practice, but the key is to create some space between you and those thoughts and emotions. So when you notice a strong emotion coming up, just try to observe it without judgment. Notice the physical sensations, the thoughts that come with it, but don't immediately label it as bad or try to push it away.
Just let it be.
Just watch it like you'd watch a wave rise and fall in the ocean. And similarly, when you're caught in those negative thoughts, step back and see them as just mental events. They're not necessarily the absolute truth about you or the situation.
They're just thoughts.
Yeah, just thoughts. And recognizing the pull of inertia, that's the desire to do nothing or excessive activity, that restlessness and overthinking, it can actually help you make more conscious choices about how you engage with them. You're not just automatically driven by them.
What about desire and fear? They're such powerful forces in our lives.
Oh, yeah.
Nisargadatta is very clear that all suffering comes from desire. He encourages us to let go of desires and fears, concepts and ideas, and to live by truth alone. Once we recognize that our true being is fearless.
Yeah.
He does say that desire itself is energy, but for it to be fulfilled, it needs clarity and strength. So how can we work with our desires and fears in a way that actually reduces suffering?
The first step is to become aware of them. Really examine them. Like, what are you always craving? What are you desperately trying to avoid? And Nisargadatta suggests that when we understand how fleeting the objects of our desires are, and that many of our fears are based on this illusion of losing something temporary, their power over us starts to weaken.
So it's not about suppressing those desires.
No, not at all. It's about understanding their root, seeing where they come from, and recognizing that true fulfillment comes from within, not from external achievement.
Right. It's about knowing that you already have everything you need inside.
Exactly. And when you connect with that indomitable, fearless self, the grip of those external drivers naturally loosens.
And then so many of us are searching for peace. Nisargadatta says true peace is found by turning inward to the I am, and that chasing happiness in external things often just leads to more misery. But that feels so counterintuitive to how we're often taught to live.
Yeah.
So how do we shift our focus from this external search to the inner I am in order to find that peace?
Well, we're conditioned to believe that happiness is about achieving goals or acquiring things. But Nisargadatta points out that those are all temporary solutions.
They don't last.
True peace, lasting peace, it's not something you find out there. It's the natural state of your being, your true self, the I am.
It's already within us.
Exactly. And by consistently directing your attention inward, you connect with that source of peace that's always available no matter what's happening externally. That constant pursuit of external happiness often comes from a feeling of lack inside, which just keeps the cycle of dissatisfaction going.
It's like a hamster wheel.
Yeah. So turning inward is about recognizing the fullness that you already possess.
Self-inquiry, asking, who am I? It's a practice recommended by many spiritual traditions. And Nisargadatta emphasizes this too. He says it's crucial to constantly question our identification with the body and the mind. So how can we make that a practical part of our daily routine, especially when life is so busy?
It doesn't require hours of dedicated practice. You can integrate self-inquiry into those little moments throughout your day. When you catch yourself identifying with a thought or feeling like I am stressed or I am a failure, just pause for a second and gently ask yourself, is this really who I am? And don't get caught up in trying to find a specific intellectual answer. Just use the question to redirect your attention inward to that underlying sense of I am.
Like a gentle nudge.
It is, and it's a powerful way to loosen the grip of those false identifications over time. Even a few moments of questioning throughout the day can make a difference.
Nisargadatta also talks about the role of the guru, both the outer guru and the inner guru. While having an external teacher can be valuable, he ultimately points to our own self as the true teacher, the Sadguru.
Right.
So how can we learn to recognize and trust that inner guidance when making decisions in our daily lives?
Well, an outer guru can be like a guide, a source of inspiration, someone to help you navigate the beginning stages of the journey. But ultimately, the wisdom and truth you're seeking, it's already inside you. And by cultivating inner stillness through practices like focusing on the I am and self-inquiry, you become more attuned to that inner voice.
It's like tuning into your own internal compass.
Exactly. And trusting that inner guidance, it comes from recognizing its wisdom, its clarity. And that becomes more apparent when your mind quiets down and isn't so influenced by all the external noise.
And for anyone feeling inspired by these teachings, Nisargadatta emphasizes the importance of effort, and maybe even more importantly, earnestness. He says that earnestness is the only real condition for success on this path. And even if we feel like we're lacking certain qualities, they'll develop with consistent effort. His words are really encouraging, like, take the first step first. All blessings come from within. So how can we cultivate that earnestness in our daily practice, especially when our motivation might be wavering?
Well, I think earnestness comes from a genuine desire for truth, a deep longing to be free from suffering. And when you keep the benefits of this understanding in mind, like greater peace, less reactivity, it helps to fuel that motivation. Even when you don't feel like practicing, just remember your intention. Start small, be consistent, and trust that those small steps taken with sincerity, they'll eventually lead to progress. It's like planting a seed. You don't see immediate results, but with consistent watering and care, it's going to grow.
That's a great way to think about it. He also highlights the importance of acceptance and non-resistance in our daily lives.
Yeah.
Instead of fighting against what we see as obstacles, he says to be curious about them.
Yeah.
to observe, to inquire, and to let things happen without getting overwhelmed. So how do we apply that when we're faced with difficult situations or challenging people?
Well, resistance just creates more inner turmoil. It amplifies suffering. So when you find yourself in a tough spot, try to just observe your reaction. Are you mentally fighting against it? What happens if you simply allow it to be without judging it or trying to change it right away?
To be with it.
Yeah. And this doesn't mean you become passive, but that you respond from a place of calmness and clarity, not from that reactive stress.
So you create space for a more skillful response.
Exactly. It's about being with what is, not what you think should be.
And finally, on this topic of applying these teachings, Nisargadatta reminds us that intellectually understanding impermanence isn't enough.
Right.
The heart needs to really get it. He encourages us to build our foundation on something lasting, that permanent self. So how do we move beyond just the intellectual understanding to a deeper, more felt sense of impermanence?
Well, I think intellectual understanding is a great starting point, but it needs to be backed up by direct experience. So try contemplating the constant changes you see around you and within you. Notice how thoughts, feelings, even physical sensations, they all come and go. And if you regularly reflect on that impermanent nature of everything, it can gradually shift your perspective.
From concept to experience.
Exactly. It becomes this visceral understanding. And then that felt sense of impermanence naturally directs your focus to what's permanent and unchanging, your true self. Now, moving into some of the deeper aspects of Nisargadatta's teachings, he talks about going beyond even the I am to a state of quietude and the absolute.
Wow.
He explains that stabilizing in the I am is actually a step towards letting go of it completely and being free from all concepts, even the concept of I am.
So that sounds like a whole other level of understanding.
It is. You see, while the I am is the closest pointer to our true nature we can grasp with our minds, it's still ultimately a concept. The ultimate goal, according to Nisargadatta, is to transcend even that fundamental identification and abide in the absolute.
The absolute.
Yeah, that unmanifest reality that's there before the I am even arises. It's a state of pure peace and non-duality beyond words. You know, stabilizing in the I am is like planting your feet firmly on the ground before you take a leap.
I like that.
And he also gives us this really profound guiding principle: I am that by which I know I am. So that suggests that the awareness that's aware of the I am is our true self.
It's like the observer of the observer.
Exactly. So when you focus on the I am, try to also become aware of the awareness that's noticing the I am. What is it that's conscious of your own being? That consciousness, that light of awareness, that's what Nisargadatta points to as your true ultimate self.
It's the subject, not the object.
Right. So
Well-
try directing your attention to that knowing itself.
He also talks about the importance of deep meditation. Focus solely on the feeling of I am. He says that this can reveal the true nature of I amness itself.
Yeah, beyond just intellectually understanding it.
So what does that kind of deep meditation actually look like?
Well, it involves a sustained, unwavering focus on the feeling of I am without letting other thoughts or images or sensations distract you. It's not about analyzing it or trying to understand it intellectually. It's about simply resting in that feeling of being. And over time, as the mind settles, a deeper, intuitive understanding can arise.
A direct knowing.
Yeah, a direct knowing of what the I am truly is and how it connects to the absolute. It's like gazing at a flame, you know. Eventually, you start to perceive its subtle nuances and the stillness at its core.
And finally, he describes the state of being established in I am as a place where thoughts and words cease. And there's this profound experience of oneness with everything, even before that understanding itself is transcended.
It's like this deep connection to everything. You see, when you're deeply established in the I am, all that mental chatter subsides, and you feel this incredible sense of unity and interconnectedness with all of existence. The boundaries of the individual self start to dissolve, and you experience being one with everything.
It's like the separation disappears.
Exactly. And that state of oneness is a huge step on the path, but Nisargadatta points to an even further transcendence, where even the experience of oneness dissolves into the ultimate reality.
So as we start to wrap up this deep dive, it seems like the main takeaway is that applying Nisargadatta's teachings in our daily lives really begins with this consistent, gentle attention to that feeling of I am.
It's the foundation. By regularly turning our attention inward to that core sense of being, we begin to unravel all those layers of misidentification that cause so much suffering.
And while intellectual understanding is helpful, the real transformation comes from direct experience and that consistent, earnest practice.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's not enough to just listen to this. These insights need to be explored, contemplated, and integrated into your everyday awareness through self-inquiry and that focused attention on the I am.
This deep dive, like all our explorations, it's just the beginning. We encourage you to continue exploring these teachings through the books we've talked about and through your own self-discovery.
There's so much wisdom in I Am That and the Nisargadatta Gita. Each time you read them, you're likely to discover something new.
So as you go about your day, we want you to consider this. If your true nature is beyond all definition, what amazing possibilities open up when you stop trying to define yourself so rigidly?
And we invite you to pay attention to that simple feeling of I am as you move through your day. Notice it, explore it, see how it changes your perspective on your thoughts, your feelings, and your experience of the world. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
We'll see you next time.